What do you think?
I think it's deeply shocking and concerning, these allegations. And, there is an investigation underway. So I would want to limit speculation on the investigation. But I think once the investigation has happened and once we know what the facts of the matter are, there are questions to be asked here about what the BBC has done and the delay that seems to have taken place in them taking action on this.
Is it right that the BBC mark their own homework, or should it be an independent investigation?
That's a good question. I think at the moment, let's let the BBC do their investigation into what's happened. But I think further down the line, we need to ask questions about that process of the BBC, because, we've got to have trust in the BBC that their processes are in place. And certainly the delay that's being reported, is very concerning. So I think those processes need to be looked at once the investigation is concluded.
OK. Talk to me. I mean, we're taking the mum's word for it, or why would we not at this stage? She contacted the BBC to say, please stop your presenter giving this money to my child who is a crack addict. Please stop, because otherwise they will die. And according to her, why would we not believe her? But according to her, she says more payments were made. So that would suggest that potentially the BBC presenter was not spoken to. Beggars believe this.
I mean, when I hear stuff like that...
It was my child.
I mean, when you hear stuff like that, and obviously the investigation needs to conclude and we need to make sure we don't speculate too much on it, but it's really concerning. And that's why I think that once the investigation has concluded, we need to take a step back and look at the process. What has happened in terms of the delay? Has the BBC acted quick enough? What has happened in terms of making sure the BBC is responding the right way to these very serious allegations?
And what do you make of the fact that this presenter has not been named?
Yeah, it's an interesting question about the presenter not being named, because on the one hand, I can understand that whilst an investigation is underway, you want to make sure that that is concluded before the name comes out in public. But on the other hand, the BBC needs to show that they are taking this seriously and taking the right precautions. And also, you don't want other presenters necessarily to be implicated because they haven't been named as being not the person who's the subject of the investigation. So it's a balancing act. I don't think there's an easy way through this. But I think what is important is the BBC concludes its investigation as quickly as possible. And that actually is part of this broader question about the processes of the BBC. Why is there a delay? Why are did they not get on with this quicker? And now it is underway. They need to do it as quickly as possible to clear up this confusion about who it might be.
But is this an exception because it's a public figure who is known to most of the country, that is paid for by an organisation that receives public money? Is there not a justification to know who that person is?
Well, what I would say about it being the BBC and it being a public institution that we all pay for, that's why we need to have trust in their processes. So that's why, let's let them do their investigation. They should do it.
Do you think it's been damaged, that trust?
I think questions like this, do shake the trust a little bit in the BBC when you hear things like this. Well, I think let's see the detail of it. As I say, I'm being careful not to speculate too much because I want to see the detail about exactly what happened when. But I think certainly in terms of the timeline, when you look at the timeline, when you hear what's been said and so on, there seems to be, on the face of it, a case to look at about are the processes in place there. And we need to make sure those processes at the BBC are solid and we can have trust in them because, as you say, they're our national broadcaster. We all pay for them. We need to make sure that they have the processes in place which we can rely on.
If this timeline's accurate, it's an absolute outrage.
I mean, the timeline does look shocking, and that's why it needs to be looked into. And I think that part of the process, once the current investigation is concluded, that part of the process needs to be looked at thoroughly.
OK. Talk to me in a little bit more detail, if you would, please, about what we've been hearing from the Chancellor, or what we will be hearing from the Chancellor later on today. I think he's speaking at Mansion House, isn't he? What does he need to say to get you on side?
Well, I'm not sure exactly.
You can't say anything.
Yeah. So I think my mind is probably made up when I go into that room. But in the interest of the country, what he needs to be doing is getting the economy growing, because we've had 13 years of low growth in the economy. We need to make sure the economy is growing. We need to make sure we have that investment that we need in getting the future industries, the future into the country and making sure we've got jobs in every part of the UK. But actually, I suspect that there's little or nothing the Chancellor can say to really reassure people, because they've had 13 years. We've had low growth for those 13 years. They haven't got any new ideas. And actually, even if he said something tonight, I don't think people would believe they have the strength in Parliament to get any of their ideas through and to hold the show together.
OK, it's good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks very much.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.